They didn't even look me in the eye when they said it. My mother sat stiffly on the cream sofa, hands folded like she was announcing church service. My father stood behind her, arms crossed, nodding grimly. And my older brother, Tyler, he leaned casually against the fireplace mantel, like he already owned the place. Grandma and Grandpa left everything to Tyler, my mom said. Just like that. No emotion. No apology. No explanation for why the two people who had raised me with bedtime stories and warm hugs and birthday cards filled with $20 bills had suddenly decided I was worth nothing. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was unreal. You're joking. Right? My father's mouth tightened. There's no joke here, Chloe. The will is clear. They left the house, the business, and the trust to your brother. Tyler smirked. Guess the golden child isn't so golden anymore. It felt like a punch to the gut. I don't believe you, I said. They loved me. They wouldn't do this. We have the will, Mom replied coolly. You can see it yourself. She pulled out a single sheet of paper from a folder on the coffee table. It was a scanned copy, not the original. The signature looked kinda off. Not wrong, just too perfect. But I wasn't allowed to inspect it. Before I could say another word, my father said, "You need to move out. By the end of the week. And you'll be removed from the business registry," Tyler added. It's nothing personal. Just how Grandpa wanted it. That's when I knew something was very, very wrong. I couldn't sleep for days. I kept replaying memories in my head, Grandpa teaching me how to fix a ledger, Grandma humming as she embroidered my initials into a quilt, both of them smiling at my college graduation while Tyler was somewhere overseas. They weren't perfect, but they loved me. They were proud of me. So why would they disinherit me? After being kicked out, I crashed at my best friend Mia's apartment. She gave me the spare room, a warm blanket, and zero judgment. I didn't tell her the full story right away. It felt too raw. Too humiliating. But I couldn't let it go. And one night, when I finally opened up, she didn't laugh. She didn't roll her eyes. She just said, "Have you seen the original will?" "No," I whispered. "Just a copy." She tilted her head. "You trust them to tell the truth about that?" And that was the moment the switch flipped. Because no, I didn't. Not anymore. The first thing I did was head to the local courthouse. It wasn't easy walking in there, knowing my parents had already moved on without me, removed me from their lives like I was a stray dog. But I had to know. I needed to see the official version of the will, the one filed with probate after my grandparents passed. The clerk was helpful, thankfully. After showing ID and explaining I was a family member, she found the probate records and printed out a certified copy of the will on file. I sat down right there in the records office and started reading. The name on the signature line was familiar, my grandfather's signature, but something about the wording didn't sit right. I'd helped him write an earlier draft of his will 2 years before he passed. I remembered the clear language, "To my granddaughter Chloe, I leave 50% of my business shares and my personal accounts. To my grandson Tyler, I leave my classic car collection and 50% of the shares." But this version, it had none of that. Everything, literally everything, was bequeathed to Tyler. Not even a sentence about me. Not even I leave Chloe $1 to acknowledge my existence, and the signature date, it was 3 days after my grandfather went into the hospital for a stroke, when he could barely speak, let alone sign legal documents. My gut turned ice cold. I flipped through the pages again, hands shaking. The witnesses were listed as employees from my father's firm. Both of them had worked there for over 20 years. One of them, I remembered, was my father's drinking buddy. That wasn't just shady. It reeked of fraud. That night, I called Mia. "Something's wrong," I whispered. "I think they forged it." It was time to start digging, quietly. I couldn't go headfirst into confrontation. I'd been cast out, and any direct accusation would only give them time to cover their tracks. Instead, I began gathering pieces. Quietly, patiently, like a puzzle I was assembling with trembling hands. First, I called my grandparents' old lawyer, Mr. Aldridge. He'd retired a year before they passed, but after some searching, I tracked him down. I introduced myself, and after a long pause, he said, "Chloe? Oh, your grandparents adored you. I assumed they left you a generous share of the estate." That almost made me cry. I told him what had happened, what I'd been shown, and how I had doubts. He fell silent. "I drafted the original will," he said slowly. "They both signed it in my presence. Your name was absolutely in it. 50% of the business to you, and the rest split between your brother and Charity. Your grandfather was clear, he said you were the one who helped him build that company." "Then why is there a new version?" I asked. "There shouldn't be." He promised to look through his old files and call me back. When he did the next day, he confirmed it, there was no amendment filed while I was their attorney. And after my retirement, I wasn't notified of any legal successor. If someone else drafted a new will, it wasn't through my firm. And it certainly wasn't someone they trusted. That sealed it. The will they were waving in front of me was not just suspicious, it was fraudulent. A complete rewrite done when my grandfather couldn't speak and my grandmother had already passed. And the people who benefited? My brother. My parents. The very people who kicked me out. Now, I had proof. I just needed a plan. I didn't confront them right away. Instead, I met with a probate attorney named Ms. Carver. She was sharp, no nonsense, and had the kind of quiet fury I needed on my side. I brought the certified will, the suspicious copy my mother had shown me, and a detailed timeline. I told her about the stroke, the signatures, and the convenient witness names. She studied the two documents for less than a minute before shaking her head. "This," she said, holding up the forged copy, "is trash. Can I do something about it?" I asked. "Oh, honey," she said with a smirk, "we're going to do everything." We filed a petition to challenge the will in probate court. Ms. Carver drafted a motion to request handwriting verification, a subpoena for the witnesses, and the medical records of my grandfather during the time the new will was allegedly signed. And then came the hard part, serving my family with the court notice. I was sitting outside Mia's apartment when I got the text from our process server, "All parties have been served." I imagined the look on my father's face when he read the legal notice. I imagined my mother's hand flying to her chest, muttering something about ungrateful daughters. And Tyler, he probably laughed. Thinking it wouldn't go anywhere. Let them underestimate me. They always had. 2 weeks later, Tyler showed up outside the cafe where I worked. He wore designer sunglasses, a pressed jacket, and that same smug look that always made me want to throw something at him. "Chloe," he said, sliding into the seat across from me, "we need to talk." I didn't offer him coffee. I didn't smile. I don't talk to people who steal from our grandparents. He rolled his eyes. "Oh, come on, you think this is going to hold up? That will's legal. Dad had it notarized. And I've got a lawyer who disagrees. Medical records are already being pulled." His jaw twitched. Good. I'd hit a nerve. "Look," he said, leaning forward, voice lower. "Maybe Dad pushed a few things around. But the business? It's running better now than ever. We can cut you in. Quietly. A small share. No court battles. Clean and done." It took everything in me not to slap him. "You want me to shut up for scraps?" I asked. "You and Dad faked a will. You cut me out of everything. You threw me out like trash." He sighed. "You're really going to drag the whole family name through court?" I met his eyes. You already did. He left angry, muttering something about how I was going to regret this. But for the first time in months, I didn't feel scared. I felt powerful. This wasn't revenge. This was justice. The court hearing was set. The first real battle to expose the forged will. But I was prepared. I had Ms. Carver, a stack of evidence, and a quiet determination I hadn't felt in years. The court was scheduled to hear motions for the forensic analysis of the signature and the medical records proving my grandfather couldn't have signed that will. But my family wasn't ready to just roll over. The night before the hearing, I got a phone call from my mother. "Chloe, stop this. This is ridiculous," she said, her voice sweet but strained. "You're embarrassing yourself." "Embarrassing myself?" I snapped. "You and Dad are the ones who've been lying and stealing from me for years. We're family, Chloe." Her voice cracked. "Why would you do this to us?" The pleading tone made my stomach turn. I used to fall for it, but not anymore. "No, Mom," I said, "you're the ones who kicked me out and decided my life didn't matter. I'm doing this because I won't let you get away with it." "Chloe, you don't understand," she whispered. "You don't understand how much is at stake. The business, it's all we have left." It was then that I realized just how deep the desperation ran. The business wasn't about family anymore. It was about control. Money. Power. They were willing to sacrifice me, and my future, for it. "I'll see you in court tomorrow," I said, hanging up the phone before she could say anything else. The courtroom was small, almost suffocating. The judge's gavel was stern, and every time I saw my parents sitting in the front row, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of disbelief. The very people who had raised me, who had taught me everything I knew about business and life, were now my enemies. My attorney, Ms. Carver, stood next to me as we presented our evidence. "Your Honor, we are here today to challenge the legitimacy of a will filed by the defendant's family," Ms. Carver began. "This will was signed under suspicious circumstances when the testator was incapacitated. We are requesting forensic analysis of the signature and the examination of medical records to prove that the will presented was fraudulent." Across the room, my parents sat together, rigid. Tyler, sitting beside them, smirked as if he knew the outcome was in the bag. But I wasn't backing down. The judge nodded. "We will proceed with the forensic examination," she said, tapping her gavel. "This case is adjourned until next month." But that wasn't the end of it. In the weeks that followed, my parents tried everything they could to convince me to back down. Every call, every text, every email was the same, a mixture of guilt, shame, and empty promises. They begged me to settle, to take a small payout, to let them keep the business. But nothing would have satisfied me at that point. I was no longer fighting for the money. I was fighting for the truth. I was fighting for the family I thought I had. The forensic examination of the will was scheduled. I had been preparing for this moment for weeks, and as I sat in the courtroom, the weight of everything I was about to uncover felt heavy in my chest. Ms. Carver stood with quiet confidence as the forensic expert, a man named Dr. Martin Reyes, walked up to the witness stand. He was a handwriting specialist, known for his work with fraud investigations. "Dr. Reyes, Ms. Carver began, could you please explain to the court your analysis of the signature on the contested will?" Dr. Reyes adjusted his glasses and turned to the judge. "Your Honor, after comparing the signature on the contested will with several verified signatures from the decedent's prior documents, it is clear that the signature does not match. The pen pressure, stroke formation, and overall consistency with the known signatures are inconsistent." I felt a surge of relief rush through me, but I knew it was still early. This was just the beginning. The room was quiet as the judge absorbed the information. My parents looked uncomfortable, glancing at each other, but not daring to speak. Tyler, however, was fuming, his jaw clenched tight. Dr. Reyes, Ms. Carver continued, based on your analysis, can you conclusively say that this signature was forged? Yes, he said without hesitation. This signature is not the same handwriting as the decedent's. It is forged. I looked over at my parents, their faces now pale. My mother shifted in her seat, and my father's eyes flickered with panic. For the first time since this whole ordeal began, I saw fear in their eyes. The truth was coming out. And they knew it. The days that followed felt like a blur. The judge ordered further investigations into the forged will, including additional expert testimony and an in-depth review of the financial records related to the business. Everything was on the table now. The night before the next hearing, I got a call from Tyler. Chloe, his voice was tight, controlled, but I could tell something had shifted. You're going to ruin everything. Do you have any idea what's going to happen to the business if this comes out? I took a deep breath. You've already ruined it, Tyler. You've ruined everything. Mom and Dad, he started, but I cut him off. They lied. They used you and me to cover up their fraud. If anyone ruined the business, it's them. There was a long silence. Then he said, quietly, what do you want? I leaned back in my chair, the weight of the entire situation pressing on me. I want what's mine. I want the truth. And I want you to stop pretending like this is all my fault. I can't change what happened, he said, his voice wavering now. But I don't know what's going to happen to the company if we lose this. It's everything we have left. It's your everything, I shot back. But it wasn't mine to begin with, was it? Not when you and Mom and Dad decided to take it all from me. He didn't respond. I could hear him breathing on the other end of the line. And then, with a defeated sigh, he said, I'll see you in court tomorrow. The next morning, I woke up with a strange sense of calm. The final hearing was today. This was the moment I had been working toward for months. The moment I would reclaim everything they had taken from me. As I sat in the courtroom, listening to the continued testimony and the mounting evidence of the forged will, I felt a wave of triumph wash over me. The pieces were falling into place. There was no way my parents could deny it anymore. And when it was my turn to speak, I stood up with confidence. Your Honor, I said, turning to face the judge, I was not part of this fraudulent will. I was excluded from the inheritance my grandparents left for me. My family betrayed me, and they thought they could get away with it. But the truth is coming to light. My parents and Tyler were sitting together in the front row. My mother's face was red with anger, her eyes wide and desperate. My father's expression was hard, but I could see the cracks forming in his armor. Tyler was staring at the ground, his shoulders slumped. But I was done being afraid. I was done being silenced. I may not get back what was stolen from me, I continued, but I won't stop until the truth is known. The judge looked at me for a long moment, then turned to my parents. It is clear to me that this will is fraudulent. We will proceed with the nullification of this document, and I will ensure the proper division of the estate according to the original legal documents. And just like that, it was over. The courtroom buzzed with activity as the judge's ruling was finalized. The will was officially nullified, and the estate, including the family business, would be divided as originally intended. My name was back on the legal documents, and the control I had once been denied was finally within my grasp. I couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions, relief, vindication, and something else, anger. I had spent months fighting for this moment, but it wasn't just about the inheritance. It was about the years of manipulation and betrayal from the people I thought I could trust. As Ms. Carver and I stood in the hallway after the ruling, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. But there was still much to do. The legal battle was over, but the real work of reclaiming the family business was just beginning. We've got a lot to handle, Ms. Carver said, glancing at me. But the legal side is taken care of. Now it's about making sure they don't try to pull anything else. I nodded, my mind already racing with plans. My first priority was securing my position in the business. I couldn't afford to let my parents or Tyler sabotage what was rightfully mine. The next step would be to start taking control, to make decisions that ensured the business could thrive without them. When I returned home that evening, I stared at the documents in my hands, my name on the official papers, the same papers that had once been torn away from me. My grandparents had left me this legacy, and no one was going to take it from me again. But it was more than just business. It was about proving to myself that I could stand on my own, that I didn't need the validation of my family to succeed. I sent an email to the board members, informing them of the new ownership structure and my position as the rightful heir to the business. The response was immediate. Some were supportive, others seemed hesitant, but I wasn't looking for approval anymore. I was here to make my mark. The aftermath of the court ruling hit harder than I had anticipated. My parents weren't just upset, they were furious. The guilt they had been hiding under the surface for so long exploded. The first time I saw them after the court decision was at my childhood home. My mother called, asking to meet in person. "I want to talk about what happened," she said when I arrived, her voice tight. "You don't know what this has done to us. Do you think we did this to hurt you?" "I think you did this because you wanted everything for yourselves," I said, my voice steady. "You used me, excluded me, and then stole from me." My father stood off to the side, his arms crossed. He wasn't saying anything. But his anger was palpable. "You're wrong, Chloe," my mother continued. "We were only trying to protect what's ours. We've worked so hard to build the business, and I didn't ask for any of this, Mom," I interrupted. "You never even gave me a chance to prove myself. You just assumed I couldn't handle it, and then you took it all away from me." My mother's eyes filled with tears, and for a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. But then I remembered the lies, the manipulation, the way they had pushed me out for their own gain. "Do you know how much we've sacrificed?" she said, her voice breaking. "We've worked day and night to keep the business afloat. And now you think you can just waltz back in and take it from us?" "I don't want to take it from you," I said, my voice calm but firm. "I want what's mine. What was always mine." There was a long pause before my father spoke, his voice cold and distant. "You'll regret this, Chloe. You've ruined everything. The business is ruined. We've lost everything." I shook my head. "You've lost everything because of your own greed. You had a chance to do things right. But instead, you chose to betray me." Tyler, who had been silent up until then, finally spoke up. "You don't understand what you're doing. The company. It's all we've got. You can't just take it from us like this." I met his gaze. "I didn't take anything from you. I'm just taking back what you and Dad tried to steal." My parents didn't respond. They knew I was right. And just like that, the family I had once known felt irreparably broken.